This episode is brought to you by Sterling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because, well, it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. Are you a hockey fan? Then you'll love Eric Zweig's new book, Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2. It's a treasure trove of untold tales, bizarre incidents, and captivating trivia that will leave even the most devoted puckhead astounded. The intense rivalries, epic showdowns, and historic clashes that shaped the NHL's early years, it's all in there. Zweig uncovers the true stories that helped shape the sport, ensuring that you will never look at hockey the same way again. Check out Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2 on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. And welcome to another edition of This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. You can find more info and more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's August 1st, and on this day in 1978, it was the end of the line for the closest challenge to Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak. Pete Rose had hit safely in 44 straight baseball games. He tied the National League record of Wee Willie Keeler set back in 1897, the night before, when he singled off knuckleballer Phil Niekro. Once the streak really got going, though, Rose had his sights set on DiMaggio's record of 56 straight games. Rose's Cincinnati Reds were on the road in Atlanta on this night, playing in front of 32,000 at Fulton County Stadium. The Braves fans in attendance were pro-Pete in this game, though, with just about everybody wanting to see the streak extended. Left-hander Larry McWilliams got the start for the Braves. The switch-hitting Rose hitting from the right side of the plate drew a walk on a 3-2 pitch in the first, and the crowd actually booed McWilliams, their own pitcher. The Reds managed 3 runs in the first, and Rose came back up in the second inning. And about 95% of chances the ball that Pete hit in the second would have been a base hit. He hit a McWilliams fastball low and hard, and it was going up the middle for sure, but McWilliams lunged for it, and with his tall, lanky frame and long reach, he was able to snag it about knee-high to record the final out of the inning. In the fourth, his ground ball was gobbled up by shortstop Jerry Royster for an easy one. Despite a huge Braves lead, Gene Garber was brought on in relief in the 7th inning. Rose slapped one down the third base line that was well hit, but third baseman Bob Horner was protecting the line despite Rose hitting from the left side of the plate now against the right-handed Garber. With 2 outs in the 9th, Rose came back to the plate with one last chance to keep the streak alive. Calling the action that night was Ernie Johnson Sr.
What a dramatic moment. Pete Rose has done it all. He's had him here screaming. His streak in danger. Now the 2-2. Swung on this. Rose's streak is broken. The Braves win. And Rose is getting another standing ovation.
The Braves won the game 16-4, and Rose was a little bitter after the game about how Garber had pitched him in the final at-bat.
I was a little surprised to score 16-4. I guess Garber's got a job to do, but he pitched me like it was the 7th game of the World Series. I hope I get a shot at him tomorrow with a 1-run lead or a tie ball game.
Now, I was a Rose fan back then, and I'm still one today, but this is coming from a guy who 8 years earlier blew up Ray Fosse on the final play of an All-Star game and was unapologetic afterward. How else was Garber supposed to pitch him? Did he want an eephus pitch? Anyway, Rose did not get his chance the next day, but he did take out some frustration on Braves pitchers. With the pressure of extending a hitting streak off, he went 4 for 5, and one of those hits the next day was just his 5th home run of the season. Rose never approached anything like his hitting streak in 1978 again. Staying in Atlanta, but moving ahead 18 years to 1996, Olympic sprinter Michael Johnson put on an impressive performance in the final of the 200-meter sprint event. Johnson entered the event as the favorite, having set the world record a little more than a month before at the Olympic trials. Johnson had also secured the gold medal in the 400 meters just 2 days before. So the format for the 400 and 200 is there are heat races, then a quarterfinal, semifinals, and then finally the field is whittled down to the final racers. So with Johnson running the 200 and the 400, he had run a lot of races. This was his 8th race in the last week. The other guys ready to sprint half of the oval had much fresher legs. Wearing his specially made Nike gold running spikes, Johnson lined up in lane 3. When the gun sounded, Johnson shot out of the blocks and ran the first 100 in 10.12 seconds. And then he went into overdrive, blistering the final 100 in 9.84 seconds to set a new world record of 19.32 seconds in the 200 meters. Johnson became the first man to win both the 200 and 400 in the same Olympic Games. On this date in 1976, Niki Lauda nearly died in a fiery crash at the Nürburgring. Not only did he survive, but he would make a return to racing later that season and battle for the championship. Lauda was the defending Formula One Series champion, and his 1976 season had gotten off to a great start, winning the first 2 races on the schedule and 4 of the first 6. He'd built up a sizable points lead heading into the 10th race of the season, the German Gran Prix at the Nürburgring. But there were concerns coming into this race. The Nürburgring is a long racetrack at a little over 14 miles. Safety was a concern for the drivers, and especially Lauda. The track could not hire enough track marshals. There weren't enough fire trucks. Another concern was weather. Rain was forecast during the race, and with such a huge track, there would inevitably be spots of the track that were wet and others dry. Prior to this race, Lauda proposed a boycott, but he was voted down by his fellow drivers, and the race proceeded. Lauda started on the outside of row 1 with a light rain falling at the start. He began the race on rain tires, but he came into the pits for slicks after the first lap. He was also topped off with fuel. On the second lap, Lauda came face-to-face with death. Whether his new slick tires weren't warm enough yet to grip the racetrack, or his rear suspension broke is not fully known, but what is known is that in the Bergwerk section, Lauda's back end fishtailed. He lost control, his car slammed into the outside retaining wall, he spun, and then his car burst into flames, coming to rest in the middle of the racetrack, facing oncoming traffic. Driver Brett Lunger tried to stop, but he couldn't do it in time to prevent a head-on collision with Lauda's engulfed car. Harold Ertl also could not get stopped in time, and he also hit Lauda's car. And now all the fears expressed in the drivers' meeting earlier were coming into full view. There was only one track marshal in the area, and he did not have the proper flame-retardant tracksuit to get anywhere close to the flaming car. Lunger and Ertl both jumped out of their cars and attempted to help. Ertl grabbed a racetrack fire extinguisher and doused the flames feeding on a full fuel tank. Driver Arturo Mazzario had also arrived on the scene. He leaped from his car, went to the burning one of Lauda, and he managed to unbuckle the driver's 6-point harness. But he was only able to do that after Lauda lost consciousness and his body relaxed. Mazzario pulled Lauda from the car, and years later, Mazzario said he doesn't know how he did what he did on this day. It was simply a miracle that a skinny kid like him could sustain the pain and heat and pull Lauda from the inferno raging around him. It took 55 seconds to extract Lauda from his burning car, but it took another agonizing 6 minutes for the helicopter to arrive to airlift him to a hospital. He had severe burns on his face and hands, along with a broken collarbone. There weren't many giving him a chance to survive, and a priest was actually brought in and delivered last rites to him. Once Lauda regained consciousness, he apparently had some choice words for that priest, saying, "Tell him I'm still alive." But the road to recovery was not going to be an easy one. He had lost his eyelids, most of his right ear, and burned his scalp horribly. But that road to recovery would continue on the racetrack. Amazingly, Lauda only missed 2 races, returning to race at Monza just 33 days later. He went on to finish 4th in that race. He placed 3rd in the second-to-last race in the U.S. to take a 3-point lead into the final race in Japan. The final race of the season featured rain, and several drivers thought the track was too dangerous to race under those conditions. Lauda pulled off the track and retired due to the conditions. He finished 1 point behind James Hunt for the championship. Lauda would reclaim his title as champion in the 1977 season and again in 1985, and then retire from racing after that. When Lauda died in 2019, it was largely due to what happened on this day 43 years before. Several months prior to his passing, he had received a double lung transplant to replace the ones scarred by the gasoline fumes and the smoke from the fire that consumed his race car on this day in 1976. And on this day in 1928, boxer Gene Tunney retired. Tunney was not the most prolific of boxers. He'd only held the heavyweight title for 2 years after beating Jack Dempsey in 1926, and he chose to defend it only twice after that. When Tunney retired on this day, he became, and still is, the only heavyweight fighter to retire undefeated. James Jeffries had initially done that in 1904, but then he came out of retirement as one of the great white hopes to fight Jack Johnson, and he lost. Time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? In Prince William County, Virginia, it is illegal to keep a skunk as a pet. Not sure why you'd want to do that. That's not one of the best of snugglers, but just keep that in mind, Prince William County. That's all for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.